I need to see your papers. Are you a U.S. citizen?
Yes, I was born in Mississippi in 1948. I served 2 tours in Vietnam with the 173rd Airborne. What's this about?
We've received information that you may not be legally present in this country. I need documentation proving your citizenship.
Not legally present?
In a North Phoenix strip mall parking lot, 75-year-old Raymond Walker walked from a VA clinic, a bag of prescriptions in hand. It was Tuesday, November 14th, 2023. This ordinary morning was about to unravel. Special Agent Kyle Morrison from Homeland Security Investigations approached. Badge clipped, weapon visible, he demanded, "I need to see your papers." Raymond, a decorated combat veteran, felt his chest tighten. "I was born in Mississippi in 1948. I served 2 tours in Vietnam with the 173rd Airborne Brigade." What's this about? He never expected such a question in his own country. The agent stepped closer. "We've received information that you may not be legally present in this country." He demanded documentation. Raymond, a man who bled for this nation, was being asked to prove his right to exist here when the surveillance camera captured every chilling second. Raymond Walker, born in Jim Crow, Mississippi, found his path in the Army. He served 2 brutal tours in Vietnam with the 173rd Airborne, earning a Purple Heart and a Bronze Star. He carried the visible and invisible scars of war. After Vietnam, he built a quiet life in Phoenix. Married, raised daughters, a grandfather, his retirement centered on VA appointments and family. Now, in a busy parking lot, his service was utterly dismissed. Not legally present? Raymond's voice rose, decades of frustration breaking through. "Boy, I was dodging bullets in the Mekong Delta while you were probably still in diapers. I've got shrapnel in my leg for my country. What kind of documentation are you looking for?" Morrison's face flushed. His response was cutting. "Sir, I'm a federal agent. I don't care about your military service. Show me documentation right now, or you'll be detained." This was the moment a lifetime of sacrifice was deemed irrelevant. A second HSI vehicle pulled up. Agent Sarah Chin emerged, her body camera activated. Morrison declared Raymond was refusing documentation, preparing for detention. "I haven't refused anything," Raymond countered, his voice tight. He produced his Arizona driver's license, his VA identification, and his military retiree ID card. "Here, Raymond Walker, born April 15, 1948. Served in the United States Army from 1966 to 1970. Honorably discharged. What else do you people want?" Morrison barely glanced at the cards. "These don't prove citizenship. I need a birth certificate or passport." Raymond's patience finally snapped. His passport was home, his birth certificate at the bank. He offered to retrieve them or have the VA verify his history. "That's not how this works," Morrison stated, reaching for Raymond's arm. Raymond instinctively pulled back. "Don't you put your hands on me. I'm a United States citizen. I haven't committed any crime. You have no legal right to detain me." The agents moved with swift federal authority. "You're resisting a federal officer," Morrison declared, reaching for his handcuffs. Raymond's shout echoed across the parking lot, drawing attention. "I'm exercising my rights as an American citizen. I fought for those rights. And you're trying to arrest me in a VA clinic parking lot for being black and walking to my truck." Bystanders stopped. Phones came out. A pharmacy tech recognized him. Another Vietnam veteran from the VFW approached, shouting Raymond's name, demanding answers. Despite the gathering crowd, the agents moved. They forced Raymond's hands behind his back. His VA medication bag fell. His military ID cards scattered across the pavement. The camera recorded it all. Federal power deployed against a 75-year-old veteran. The handcuffs clicked. Raymond Walker felt a profound helplessness, a betrayal deeper than any combat wound. "This is wrong," he whispered, tears streaming down his face. everything I did, everything I sacrificed, and you're treating me like I don't belong." The agents ignored the growing crowd, placing him in their vehicle. Agent Chin's body camera recorded Raymond's raw anguish through the barrier. "I killed people for this country, and this is what my service means." The 35-minute drive to the HSI field office was a silent torment. Raymond's mind replayed a lifetime of memories, were now cheapened by the cold steel on his wrists. At the office, he was processed like any other detainee. Fingerprints, a mugshot, his wallet, and medications inventoried. "I want to call my daughter," he demanded. Morrison typed at a computer. "You'll get your call after we verify your status." Raymond's cold fury broke through. "Verify what? I gave you my social security number. Run it through your system. Everything about me is documented. What exactly are you verifying?" Morrison finally entered the information. Within minutes, the system confirmed. Raymond Walker, U.S. citizen by birth, decorated combat veteran, no criminal record, no immigration violations. Morrison stared at the screen, his face paling. Chin closed her eyes. They had just detained a decorated American combat veteran based solely on an anonymous false report. "Mr. Walker," Morrison said, his voice stiff. "There appears to have been an error. You're free to go." Raymond's voice was quiet, but it resonated with an authority that dwarfed theirs. "An error? You detained an American citizen. You handcuffed a 75-year-old combat veteran. You humiliated me in front of my community, and you call that an error?" He demanded the source of the information. Morrison printed the complaint. Anonymous caller had reported suspicious foreign-looking male at the VA clinic claiming he didn't sound American and might be using false documents. Raymond read it, his hands shaking with rage. "Foreign-looking? I'm a black man in America, and someone decided that made me foreign. And you responded without question, without verification, without any actual investigation." He walked out, his daughter waiting. She embraced him and Raymond broke down, sobbing. "They treated me like I don't belong here," he cried. But Raymond Walker was not nobody. He was a decorated veteran with undeniable proof, security footage, and a daughter who was a civil rights attorney. The fight was far from over. Raymond Walker faced the federal agent, his words slicing through the casual atmosphere of the strip mall parking lot. He had stated his identity, his birth, his decorated service. But Agent Morrison was unmoved, his demeanor tightening. "Sir, I'm a federal agent conducting an official investigation. I don't care about your military service. I care about your legal status in this country." This direct dismissal of Raymond's sacrifice was a calculated move, stripping away his legitimacy. Morrison issued an ultimatum. Show documentation now, or face detention. Raymond's legendary patience, honed over decades of quiet resilience, began to fracture. "Don't care about my military service?" His voice incredulous. "I fought for this country. I bled for this flag." He detailed the shrapnel in his leg, the metal detectors it triggered, the constant reminder of his cost for America. What the agents failed to grasp was the depth of pride they were challenging. At this critical juncture, a second HSI vehicle arrived. Agent Sarah Chin emerged, her body camera already recording. Morrison immediately briefed her, stating Raymond was refusing to provide documentation and that he was preparing to detain him. Raymond quickly corrected the narrative. "I haven't refused anything. I told him I'm an American citizen. I told him I'm a Vietnam veteran." He pointed out the absurdity of carrying a birth certificate everywhere, instead offering his Arizona driver's license, his VA identification card, and his military retiree ID. Chin stepped closer, her camera capturing the raw anger and hurt on Raymond's face. She reiterated the need for verification and promised a quick resolution if he cooperated. Raymond, hands shaking slightly from either anger or an age-related tremor, retrieved the cards. He recited his name, birth date, birthplace, social security number, and military service dates, 1966 to 1970, honorably discharged. "Anything else?" he challenged. Morrison took the cards, but his dismissal was swift and absolute. "These don't prove citizenship. Anyone can get a driver's license. I need a birth certificate or passport." Raymond explained his passport was at home, his birth certificate in a bank safety deposit box. He lived 20 minutes away, he could retrieve them, or they could call the VA. Morrison's reply was final. "That's not how this works. You're coming with us for processing and verification at our facility." At this moment, the casual demand for papers transformed into an imminent loss of freedom. The parking lot surveillance camera, in stark high definition, recorded the pivotal interaction. Morrison reached for Raymond's arm, intending to guide him to their vehicle. Raymond, fueled by instincts forged in combat and a lifetime of refusing to be diminished, reacted. He pulled his arm back sharply. "Don't you put your hands on me," he commanded, his voice resonating with authority. "I'm a United States citizen. I'm a combat veteran. I haven't committed any crime. You have no legal right to detain me." Morrison instantly escalated. "You're resisting a federal officer." He moved for his handcuffs. Raymond's voice rose to a shout, drawing the attention of shoppers across the parking lot. "Resisting? I'm exercising my rights as an American citizen. I fought for those rights. And you're trying to arrest me in a VA clinic parking lot for being black and walking to my truck." Several bystanders froze, their phones emerging. A pharmacy technician from the VA clinic stepped outside, recognizing Raymond. An elderly white man, a fellow Vietnam veteran, approached, his voice sharp with concern. "That's Ray Walker. He's a decorated combat veteran. What the hell are you doing to him?" Morrison ignored the growing crowd. He grabbed Raymond's arm more forcefully. Raymond, despite his age and bad leg, possessed a surprising strength. He pulled away again, stumbling. Chin moved to assist. Together, the two agents forced Raymond's hands behind his back. The camera clearly captured the scene. Two federal agents subduing a 75-year-old combat veteran. Raymond's VA medication bag dropped. His military ID cards scattered across the asphalt. The handcuffs clicked shut. For the first time since the Tet Offensive in 1968, Raymond Walker felt truly helpless. Not afraid. He'd faced worse, but a profound helplessness that cut deeper than any shrapnel, a sense of betrayal that transcended physical pain. "This is wrong," he stated, his voice thick with emotion. "Everything I did, everything I sacrificed, and you're treating me like I don't belong in my own country." The crowd swelled, growing louder and more vocal. The fellow veteran called someone on his phone. The pharmacy tech recorded the events, but the agents ignored them all, placing Raymond in the back of their vehicle, separated by a metal barrier. Chin's body camera captured Raymond's face through the partition, tears streaming down his weathered cheeks, his eyes reflecting disbelief and a crushing sense of betrayal. "I killed people for this country," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "I watched my friends die, and this is what my service means." The drive to the HSY field office lasted 35 minutes. Raymond sat in silence, his mind cycling through his life. Enlisting, his drill sergeant's words, his first firefight, earning his Bronze Star, holding his newborn daughters, burying his wife. Now, all of it felt cheapened, reduced to nothing, sitting handcuffed in a federal vehicle. This emotional toll, the quiet despair in the back of that car, would become central to what came next. At the field office, he was processed like any other detainee. The fingerprints taken from hands that had pulled triggers in Vietnam, held dying men, and worked on engines for decades. a mugshot taken of a decorated combat veteran, his wallet, medications, keys, and military IDs inventoried and placed into a plastic bag. "I want to call my daughter," Raymond demanded, asserting his right. Morrison, typing at a computer, replied, "You'll get your call after we verify your status." Raymond's patience had evaporated, replaced by cold fury. "Verify what? I gave you my social security number. Run it through your system. Call the Department of Defense. Call the VA. I've been in government databases for 55 years. Everything about me is documented, verified, and on record. What exactly are you verifying?" Morrison offered no verbal response. He simply entered Raymond's information into the system, and the response was instantaneous. Raymond Walker, U.S. citizen by birth. Social Security number issued in Mississippi in 1948. Military service from 1966 to 1970, honorable discharge. Purple Heart and Bronze Star recipient. VA benefits since 1970. No criminal record. No immigration violations. The system confirmed it all. Morrison stared at the screen, his face draining of color. Chin, reading over his shoulder, briefly closed her eyes. They had just detained, handcuffed, and processed a decorated American combat veteran based solely on an anonymous tip that was demonstrably false. "Mr. Walker," Morrison said, his voice stiff, devoid of apology. "There appears to have been an error. You're free to go." Raymond's reply was quiet, but it held more weight than any shouted accusation. "An error? You detained an American citizen. You handcuffed a 75-year-old combat veteran. You humiliated me in front of my community, and you call that an error?" He demanded the information that triggered this entire ordeal. He wanted to know who reported him, what they said, and he wanted it in writing. Morrison hesitated, then printed the anonymous complaint. Raymond read it, his hands trembling with rage. The report alleged a suspicious foreign-looking male at the VA clinic, claiming he didn't sound American and might be using false documents. No name, no specific evidence. Raymond's voice dripped with contempt. "Foreign-looking? I'm a black man in America, and someone decided that made me foreign. And you responded without question, without verification, without any actual investigation. You just saw a black man and assumed the anonymous racist was right." Neither agent could meet his eyes. They offered no defense, no explanation. Raymond walked out of the HSI field office at 2:15 p.m., 4 hours after his detention began. His daughter was waiting outside, having been alerted by the fellow veteran who witnessed the arrest. She canceled her work meetings, retrieved his truck, and arrived at the federal building consumed by a fury matching her father's. "Dad, are you okay?" She embraced him. Raymond, the man who had faced down enemy fire, broke down completely, sobbing against his daughter's shoulder. "They treated me like I don't belong here," he choked out. "After everything I did, everything I gave, they treated me like I'm nobody." But Raymond Walker was not nobody, and the agent's error was about to become a very public reckoning. Raymond Walker, the decorated combat veteran, walked out of the HSI field office a free man, yet irrevocably changed. His daughter, an attorney specializing in civil rights, was waiting. She had canceled her workday, retrieved his truck, and now held her sobbing father in the federal building's parking lot. "They treated me like I don't belong here," he wept. "After everything I did, everything I gave, they treated me like I'm nobody." This was the profound emotional wound inflicted by the arbitrary exercise of federal power. But Raymond Walker was not nobody. He possessed irrefutable documentation, he had witnesses, and crucially, security footage had captured every moment of his humiliation. His daughter, a sharp legal mind, I'd immediately recognize the profound injustice and the clear legal violations. Within a week, she began assembling a case that would echo far beyond Phoenix. This was the shift from personal trauma to public challenge. 3 weeks after the incident, the lawsuit was filed in federal court. Raymond Walker versus United States Department of Homeland Security, Special Agent Kyle Morrison, Special Agent Sarah Chin. The complaint was devastating in its scope. It alleged violations of Raymond's Fourth Amendment rights, false imprisonment, racial profiling, and age discrimination. It further claimed intentional infliction of emotional distress and deprivation of rights under color of law. Each charge built upon the undeniable events of that Tuesday morning. The evidence against the federal agents and their department was overwhelming. The parking lot surveillance footage was paramount. It graphically depicted agents confronting a 75-year-old man still holding his VA medication bag, demanding papers, then rejecting his military identification cards. The video showed them forcibly detaining him despite his age and passionate protests, all without demonstrable probable cause. This visual evidence made it impossible to dismiss the claims. During discovery, Agent Chin's body camera footage, initially withheld, was reluctantly turned over. It corroborated the surveillance video, providing an even more intimate perspective of Raymond's anguish and the agent's unyielding stance. Witness statements from the pharmacy technician, the fellow Vietnam veteran, and other bystanders uniformly confirmed Raymond's account, adding a layer of human testimony to the cold, hard video. But perhaps the most damning piece of evidence was the anonymous complaint itself. It claimed a suspicious foreign-looking male at the VA clinic didn't sound American and might be using false documents. This report could not withstand even basic scrutiny when applied to Raymond Walker, a black man born in Mississippi, speaking with a distinct Southern accent. It starkly exposed the purely racial motivation behind the initial tip. This single document revealed the systemic bias at play. The agent's failure to conduct any actual investigation before detaining Raymond, despite his military ID, his clear VA connection, and his obvious age, further demonstrated a pattern of assuming guilt based on appearance. The lack of due diligence was not merely negligent, it suggested a willingness to act on biased assumptions. 18 months later, the case proceeded to trial in federal court. The courthouse was packed daily. Veterans organizations filled the gallery, their faces grim. Civil rights groups were present, alongside media outlets covering every development. The visibility of the trial ensured that Raymond's story would not be confined to a local news report. It would be amplified across the nation. Raymond Walker testified for 2 full days. He walked the jury through his entire life. He spoke of growing up in Jim Crow, Mississippi, where racial injustice was a daily reality. He recounted enlisting to escape poverty, surviving the brutal combat of Vietnam, and then returning home to a country that often failed to appreciate his sacrifice. He described building a quiet life, only to be detained at 75 for the crime of being black in a parking lot. His testimony was raw and powerful. "I've carried shrapnel in my leg for 54 years, he told the jury, his voice breaking. "Every morning I wake up, I feel it. Every time it rains, I'm reminded that I bled for this country." He spoke of nightmares, of fallen friends whose names were on the Vietnam Wall. And after all that, an anonymous racist makes a phone call and federal agents decide I need to prove I'm American. Tell me, what else could I have done? What else could I have been? How many more times do I have to prove I belong? His questions hung heavy in the courtroom, challenging the very notion of what it meant to be an American and how that identity was recognized. This was not just a legal battle, it was a profound moral reckoning. His daughter testified next, recounting the devastating image of her proud father sobbing outside the federal building. She described the profound change in him after the detention, the diminishment of a man who had always stood tall. Military records specialists presented irrefutable evidence of Raymond's service, his decorations, his honorable discharge, a stark contrast to the agent's initial dismissal. Constitutional law experts detailed the Fourth Amendment violations, the clear lack of probable cause, and the illegal nature of his detention. The surveillance footage played repeatedly in the courtroom, a silent, damning loop. It showed a decorated combat veteran, a Purple Heart recipient, a Bronze Star honoree, being treated like a common criminal in the country he had fought to defend. The images were indelible, painting a picture of systemic failure and individual abuse. The defense struggled against this tide of evidence. Their arguments crumbled under the weight of the video and the emotional impact of Raymond's testimony. The collapse of their case was complete and absolute. The jury deliberated for 9 intense hours. The weight of Raymond Walker's testimony, the stark images of the surveillance footage, and the damning anonymity of the original complaint hung in the air. When they finally returned, the courtroom, packed with veterans, civil rights advocates, and media, held its breath. The verdict was unanimous: guilty on all counts. This wasn't just a legal victory. It was a profound vindication for a lifetime of service and a public condemnation of unchecked authority. The damages awarded were extraordinary, sending an unmistakable message: a total of $16.8 million. This included $5.3 million in compensatory damages, specifically for emotional distress, false imprisonment, and the egregious violation of Raymond's constitutional rights. Beyond that, the jury awarded an astounding $11.5 million in punitive damages. These were not merely to compensate Raymond, but to punish the federal agencies and their agents, and to deter future acts of racial profiling and the blatant disregard for veterans' dignity. The amount was designed to resonate, a financial penalty so significant it would force systemic change. Raymond sat quietly as the verdict was read, his daughters on either side, the veterans behind him filling the courtroom with silent support. He did not celebrate. He simply nodded, a soldier acknowledging a mission completed. The battle was fought, the truth affirmed, and the system held accountable. The consequences for the agents involved were immediate and severe. Both Special Agent Kyle Morrison and Special Agent Sarah Chin were terminated from their positions. Their careers, built on federal authority, ended abruptly, a direct result of their actions in that parking lot. The supervisor, who had failed to question the obviously flawed anonymous complaint, was demoted. This reflected a critical breakdown in oversight and judgment within the chain of command. The accountability extended beyond individual officers to the institutional structures. In the wake of the verdict, Homeland Security investigations announced sweeping policy changes. These were not suggestions, but mandatory reforms designed to prevent a similar incident from ever occurring again. The new policies mandated verification of anonymous complaints before any enforcement action could be taken. No longer could a baseless, biased tip trigger an immediate federal response without scrutiny. Furthermore, HSI implemented requirements to accept military identification as valid proof of identity and citizenship. This was a direct acknowledgement of Raymond's initial, dismissed attempts to prove his status. New training programs were instituted, focusing on bias awareness and veterans' rights. Federal agents would now be educated on the unique experiences and legal protections afforded to those who had served. Finally, a strict prohibition was put in place against detaining individuals at VA facilities without extraordinary justification. This recognized the sensitivity and specific purpose of these locations for veterans. Raymond Walker, rather than retreating into bitterness, chose to transform his experience into a force for good. He donated a significant portion of his settlement to veterans organizations and civil rights groups. This act ensured that his victory would benefit others who faced similar injustices. He became a speaker at military events and civil rights conferences, telling his story not with anger, but with a quiet, powerful determination. He spoke of the need for vigilance, for respect, and for holding authority accountable. His goal was clear: to prevent what happened to him from ever happening to anyone else. The very parking lot surveillance footage that sealed his case became required viewing in federal law enforcement training programs. It served as a stark, visual case study of how racial profiling operates, by its devastating human cost, and the consequences of assuming someone doesn't belong based on their appearance or a biased tip. It became a permanent lesson in the perils of overreach and prejudice. The video, once a record of humiliation, transformed into a powerful tool for education. In Phoenix, Arizona, Raymond Walker returned to his quiet life. But it was a quiet life with something profound restored: the certainty that his service mattered, that his citizenship was unassailable, that even at 75, a combat veteran could fight one more battle, a battle for dignity and justice, and win. His case became a landmark, a powerful affirmation that the fight for rights sometimes comes from the most unexpected places and from individuals who simply refuse to be diminished. What systemic questions, however, remain unanswered by this singular victory? The Raymond Walker versus United States Department of Homeland Security verdict sent shockwaves through federal law enforcement. It was more than a judgment against two agents. It was a rare public indictment of systemic vulnerabilities. HSY's policy reforms, including mandatory verification of anonymous tips and recognizing military IDs, were direct acknowledgments of these failures. Raymond's victory restored his personal dignity, but the larger question lingered. How easily could such a flagrant injustice occur? The mandatory viewing of the parking lot surveillance footage in federal law enforcement training became a stark, visual lesson. It laid bare the mechanics of racial profiling, an anonymous, baseless tip, an unchecked assumption, and the rapid escalation of power against a vulnerable citizen. But this video, while powerful, could only teach. It could not inherently change the underlying biases that allowed such a report to be filed and then acted upon in the first place. Could policy changes truly inoculate against ingrained prejudice? Raymond Walker's story became an emblem of perseverance, a testament to the power of one man to stand against an overreaching government. He had fought, bled, and sacrificed for his country, only to face humiliation and doubt from the very system he defended. His subsequent fight in the courtroom, backed by his daughter's legal prowess, forced accountability where none seemed initially possible. The $16.8 million award was not merely a sum of money. It was a punitive measure designed to make a point. The cost of racial profiling and disregard for veterans' dignity would be exorbitant. Yet this singular victory, however significant, did not erase the systemic challenges. The anonymous tip, describing a foreign-looking male who didn't sound American, was a chilling reminder of how easily prejudice can weaponize the mechanisms of law enforcement. It highlighted a persistent societal issue: the ingrained tendency to conflate appearance or perceived origin with legal status, particularly when applied to minority communities. What if Raymond hadn't had a civil rights attorney for a daughter, or clear surveillance footage? The thought is haunting. How many similar incidents triggered by similar baseless assumptions quietly slip through the cracks without a national spotlight? How many individuals, lacking Raymond's irrefutable proof, his tenacious spirit, or his daughter's legal expertise, are unjustly detained, interrogated, or even deported? The official systems, even with new policies, rely heavily on individual agents' discretion, interpretation, and inherent biases. Raymond's case underscored the fragility of constitutional protections when confronted by unchecked authority. His Fourth Amendment rights were violated because agents chose to act on suspicion rather than probable cause. His identity as a citizen was questioned based on appearance, not evidence. The legal threshold for detention meant to safeguard freedom was seemingly lowered by an unverified phone call and the racial bias embedded within it. The very notion of legal presence became a weapon turned against someone who had given everything to ensure the legal presence of his nation on the world stage. It forces a disturbing question. Does service to one's country truly guarantee belonging, or can that belonging be revoked by the casual prejudice of another? Raymond Walker returned to his quiet life, finding a measure of peace and vindication. His mission as a soldier had always been to defend his country. In his later years, his final mission became defending the very ideals of justice and belonging that his country was supposed to represent. He won. But the systemic shadows, the what-ifs, remain. The fight for dignity and justice, as Raymond's story powerfully illustrates, doesn't end with one victory. It requires constant vigilance and the courage to stand up again and again, when authority oversteps its bounds and threatens the fundamental promise of citizenship. Are we, as a society, truly vigilant enough to prevent the next Raymond Walker? The answer remains unsettlingly uncertain.